Hello y bienvenidos to this episode of UNF Community Counsel, where I'm answering community questions like this one. This one is regarding the how to make characters jump inside Unreal Engine. And in this question, Danbam says, "Nice tutorial. Do you know how can I add a jump buffer?" And yeah, it's pretty simple depending on your requirements or necessities inside your game. So let's do it. I have a completely blank project here. So I need to add a character that I can use to jump. And if I go to add, let's go to add feature or content pack. Let's select the third person. We can add to the project. And here it's been added. I can even open the map that comes with the project. I'll close and I'll press play. And you will see that now I have this character that I can move around and jump. So that's perfect. Now, let's add a jump buffer. And if you don't really know what a jump buffer is, it's a common functionality that platformers have. And these platformers, whenever you're jumping around, you will usually have some kind of obstacles. Let's see if I just duplicate this. And now let's say that those are platforms. I jump here, and I can also jump here. Now, whenever you want to increase the difficulty of this type of games, you usually just make the gaps longer. This will mean that I will need to jump at the almost edge. And if I try to jump while standing, it's a shorter jump than if I was just running away and jumping. And I just realized that this is an impossible jump. So let's say like that. Now, the thing is that maybe you will not have this type of space to jump. Like this. And again, if I jump without running, the jump is shorter. You may create some kind of platforming challenges, and I'm going to move this a little bit to the back. Something like this. And I do need to get these jumps right. Now, whenever we are in the air, if I press the jump key again, I'm not jumping. I mean, you can add a double jump. We covered that in the tutorial where this question came from. But if you do not have a double jump, then every time you jump, the jump is consumed and is ignored, right? And it's okay if I'm falling, right? And if I try to jump at the peak of the jump, like here, my player will understand that, well, if I'm trying to jump in the air and I do not have a double jump, then nothing should happen. But what happens if I'm jumping at this stage? And let me try to... Okay, perfect. At this stage, depending on how quick the pace is in your game, you will probably find it somewhat frustrating that you're pressing jump and nothing is happening. But as you see here, I'm not in the ground, so I'm not able to jump. So if I press jump in this specific frame, then, well, nothing should happen. But our brain doesn't process the same information at the same time. So for me, right now, I will try to press jump before finally falling in the ground. And if you heard my key press, it's like my jump never happened, even though it should. You will always want to make your player comfortable with the controls that you are providing. So in this case, if your main mechanic is jumping, you better make sure that it's feeling good. So that's why we buffer the jump. So whenever we are falling, let's say we're here, and my player thinks that they should be able to jump, then okay, we just save the jump. Instead of losing it, we save it. And whenever we finally touch the ground and we can jump again, we immediately do a jump, even though they have not pressed the jump button in this specific frame. So that's the way that we're going to solve it. And it's very simple. I mean, it takes longer to explain it. So let's do it. Let's open the character. Should be in the third person blueprints folder. It's this one. Double click it. I'll put it here. Okay, so we need to find the jump input. Oh, and by the way, I'm using Unreal Engine 5.1.1, just in case something changed through the years. But stuff usually remains the same, so I don't think we will have this problem with these functions because the jump and the stop jumping has been the same since Unreal 4. Okay, so here's my action, my input, whenever I press jump, this gets called. Right. So first I need to know, and I need to determine if I can jump. And if I just type, well, right click in an empty space, type can jump, the character class, this one, parent class character, already has this functionality. And it says check if the character can jump in the current state. So let's move this around. I want to use this Boolean value if I need to do something whenever I can jump, and if I can't jump, then I want to do something else like buffering the jump. So let's drag and drop from the triggered input, and let's type a branch node, also called an if node. And this node will let me determine by some condition if I'm running the true input pin or the false input pin. So the condition is this one, can jump. So if I can jump, then let's jump. But if I can't, let's buffer the jump. So to buffer the jump, I only need to save some kind of value so I can remember, or well, the program or my class can remember that we have already pressed the jump button. So let's create a variable. It will be a Boolean variable because I only want to know if I already saved the buffered jump or I haven't saved a jump. So let's just call it buffered jump. Now let's use it. Let's drag and drop it and set it. And if I can't jump, I want to set it as a true value. And just so I know that this is working, what I'm going to do is going to press play from here. Instead of going back to the viewport, to the main viewport, let's press play here. I'll move my window here, and here I will select the object that has been spawned. This way, I'll go back to my project, to my execution window. Let's click on the window so I can control my character. And whenever I press jump, I should see the pins firing. So right now, it's firing twice. Now, this is happening because here in the enhanced input action, we are pressing jump every time this is triggered. And this is triggered whenever this key is being held. So just to make things easier, I'll just move this pin to here. We have done a tutorial about the enhanced input, and you can check it out later if you want to know exactly what's happening here, or what are these states of the trigger. So for now, let's just change it to start. This means that whenever I start pressing the key, which is in this case mapped to the spacebar, this will get called once, because you can only start once. While this key is being held, this trigger is called multiple times. Yeah, and you can see it if I just connect it like this and press play. If I'm holding the key, you will see that this is getting called multiple times. And you can even see when I can jump, and it's exactly when I'm in the ground. So it's working. Let's remove this pin by holding Alt and clicking, left clicking, or you can right click and break the link. Perfect. So with this, now it should be that I press the jump key, it jumps, and nothing else happens. But if I press jump again in the air, I'm buffering the jump, which is exactly what I need. And let's not worry too much about the stop jumping. We covered that in the tutorial for the jump tutorial where this question came for. So now, just to make things a little bit neater and cleaner, what I'm going to do is I could collapse the nodes to a function, but what I'm going to do, just so we can see everything here, is create a custom event. This will be called buffer the jump, buffer jump. I'll remove this with the Alt key and connect it like this, buffer jump. So you see that everything here will work exactly as it was working, because this custom event, whenever it's called through this execution pin, will call this event and run the code that was already there. So it's a way of keeping things cleaner, and also a neat way of reusing stuff later on, because if later on I need to buffer a jump in another situation, then I can just call the event and be done with it. Okay, so we have buffered the jump. We need to tell my character to jump whenever this value is a true value. Oh, and if the nodes auto-organize themselves, is because I'm using the Blueprint Assist plugin. And let me just change it to never auto format. Okay, perfect. Now, when do I know that the character has finally landed on the ground? Okay, so if you look here, because we are in the character class, here in the functions, we can override some of them. And inside them, I will find the landed function. So this function, I can override it, and whenever we land, this will get triggered. So if I type here print string, then I jump, and immediately after I land, you will see hello. Now here, we can check. We can make an if statement or a branch node, and I will call the condition will be the buffer jump, because if I have buffered the jump, I will want to jump. So if this is true, then let's jump again. So the same way that I have buffered the jump, I should unbuffer the jump. So let's custom event. If I can type correctly, come on. Add a custom event, unbuffer jump. And the unbuffer jump is pretty much the same. Let's copy this. But the main difference is that here I'm removing the check. I'm turning this value from true to false. Let's compile. Let's save. So here we land, we jump, and then we unbuffer the jump. Now if I press play, it won't work. So let's press play And let's see that it didn't work. It did land, and let me put this details panel, let's dock it so I have a little bit more space. Let's press play, and you will see that we are executing the jump. So what happened? So here, if you put your mouse on top of it, it will say that, note, the movement mode is still falling. And whenever we're falling, this can jump is false, because you cannot jump unless you have a double jump, but usually you cannot jump while you are falling. So if this event says that the movement mode of my character is still falling, then it doesn't matter that I'm calling this jump node, this jump function. So how could we fix it? A super quick fix is just adding a delay. Delay, and it should be very small, 0.1. We just need this to execute in another frame. So this movement mode has changed from falling to landed, or well, to walking. Now let's press play. Let's jump in the air, and you will see that now my jump was buffered. Now I'm really not fond of this solution, because delay nodes can sometimes produce unexpected behaviors. Especially when the delay is longer. I mean, if we had a 1 second delay, then it won't work as expected. So, like it says here, consider on movement mode change as well. So that's what we're going to use now. Let's delete the delay. And in functions, let's go to on movement mode change, and let's override it. Here it is. Oh, if the parent function is not called in your case, like you have it like this, I wouldn't worry too much about it. The code in C++ will still be called, unless you're modifying a custom class. But if you want to have the parent, which usually you just call it just in case, you can right click and add a call to parent function and connect everything that you find here, just in case. Okay, so let's use the on movement mode changed. Let's just copy, well, let's just disconnect this and put it here. Now, we want to know if we have changed from the falling state to the walking state. And you can check which movement modes there are. If you can right click and make literal movement mode enum. No? Well, you can also just from here, from the previous movement mode or the new movement mode, you can drag a pin and press make. No, doesn't let me. Okay, we can also check it in the character movement. Let's go to details. And here you will find the default movement land movement mode. So there is walking, nav mesh walking, falling, swimming, flying, and custom mode. We only need to check about the if we're falling and if we are now transitioning to a walking state. Because this nav mesh walking is for AIs usually, but yeah, we just need to do walking. Okay, so here, let's check from the previous movement mode. Let's compare it, and that's not compare, this is compare. Let's see if it's equal to falling. And in the new movement mode, let's check again. Let's check if it's equal, again, equal enum. Let's check if it's walking. So if the previous movement mode was falling and the new movement mode is walking, Then we want to check if we have buffered the jump, and if we have buffered the jump, let's jump. So again, I'll add a branch node and connect it like this. You could also add a pin here and connect the buffer jump and remove this node, but I don't like to mix that many conditions, just so it's a little bit better to understand or easier to understand. Perfect. So now I don't need a delay button for this to work. So let's press play. You will see that right now the movement mode changed, but it wasn't changing from falling to walking. It was probably changing from nothing to walking. So let's jump. And I didn't buffer a jump because I didn't press spacebar in the air. So the condition is working that, oh, you're transitioning from falling to walking. So let's check if you have buffered a jump. So let's buffer a jump by jumping in the air. And there it is. We jumped in the air. And whenever we fall and finally hit the ground, we jumped. So the jump has been buffered. The only problem with it is not exactly a bug, it's more about game design. Because you don't really need, or you don't really want your players to buffer a jump whenever they're in the apex of the jump, like there. Like, I only want the players to buffer a jump whenever they are near the ground. So the way I'm going to do this part is through time approximation. So what do I mean by this? And let me explain it a little bit better. Whenever I'm falling, let's say like this, one approach could be to check the distance to the ground. But the thing about that is that then I would need to worry about the collisions of my terrain and check which components can this line trace collide to the ground, and like it's too much work, at least for me. In some cases this would bring better results, but I'll just try to solve it in a very simple way, which is a time-based way. Now, this could be influenced by time dilation. We will try that it doesn't, but it could play negatively, or not that negatively, but it may be a little bit inconsistent if you are dealing with different machines with different frame rates, or you're running the game at a low frame rate, right? But if you're in that case, it's like playing a platformer is not the best experience, so I wouldn't really worry too much about it. So the way I'm going to handle this is, instead of checking how close to the ground I am, is checking how much time has passed after the key press. So if I press this spacebar, and this is my super spacebar, I will check. I tried it with 0.3 seconds. So if in 0.3 seconds I didn't touch the ground, then I'm gonna unbuffer my jump. But if in 0.3 seconds I do touch the ground, then because the jump is still buffered, then I will jump. Which is a pretty good solution, actually, because you only need to worry too much. You only really need to worry about the time and not too much about the environment. So you can throw any type of environment, this type of approach, it will still work. The only thing you need to tweak is the number of seconds that you want your jump to be buffered. So yeah, don't think that this will you need only one type of approach to solve a situation. It's like there will be multiple solutions that adapt to different types of scenarios. So in our case, let's just check. So because right now I can press jump even after jumping, like I'll press 2 times the jump button immediately. Yeah, so that shouldn't be the case. Let me remove the unlanded event and move this a little bit closer. Now, how can you solve this? The easy way is, let's use delay nodes. You can put here a delay node. .2, and here let's just unbuffer the jump. And this will actually work. If I press 2 times the jump button immediately, you will see that my jump was unbuffered. And it won't matter if I'm pressing it like with that time. If I fall to the ground within 0.2 seconds, then my actual buffer jump works. And you can see it working because this has been light up. So this is working, but I really don't like to use delayed nodes. Why? Because they are kind of restrictive in the sense that, oh, let's say this is 1 second. They are restrictive because we have no way of stopping them. So if this is 1 second, if I actually do this, you will see that even though my jump triggered, the delay node is still counting this type of the internal time of this delay node is still counting down, and whenever it finishes, it will unbuffer the jump. But let's say that I'm jumping right now and I'm buffering the jump right now, then it means that instead of having 1 second to jump or to actually use the buffer jump, this delay has not been reset. And instead of having 1 second, you will have 0.1 seconds. So it will lead to different type of results depending on how or when did you press the jump key. You can also solve this by, let me stop the execution, by calling a retriggerable delay. And this retriggerable delay actually gets retriggered. So if this is 1 and I'm pressing it and I press it again, you will see that the delay seconds inside of them, and let me try to, oh, there it is. These delay seconds actually get renewed. So it's a way of stopping it, but not really, because this will trigger after 0.8 seconds. So this shouldn't happen if I have already buffered the jump. Excuse me, if I already unbuffered the jump, because we have already set up the condition. So the way to avoid this is actually through events, through timer events. Okay, so here, let's delete that retriggerable delay and let's call the timer. And in timer, let's select the set timer by event. Now, which event do I want is the unbuffer jump, and we can connect it like this. Or if you don't like this kind of wires, and I don't really like them, we can use this create event node. And this node, we can change the function or event to unbuffer jump, should be at the end. Unbuffer jump. Here we define the time, let's say 1 second. And I want to cancel this event whenever I unbuffer the jump, because I can unbuffer the jump through this timer or through this movement mode change event, right? So the way I will do that is saving a value to this variable to this timer. So this timer returns me a little reference to this timer. So here, let's promote to a variable. Let's call it, and I press F2 by the way. Let's call it unbuffer jump timer reference. And that's not unbuffered. There it is. There is not. No, it is not now. There it is. Now we have this variable. Let's save and compile. And this variable will be very useful to me, because whenever I unbuffer the jump, I want to stop this timer. So in this unbuffer jump, let's call our variable and type clear and invalidate timer. This will make it so whenever we unbuffer a jump, we're immediately clearing the timer. If the timer runs first, then it will buffer the jump and then it will try to invalidate and clear the timer. So it's actually not our principal worry. So we're not going to be able to see this if I put the time as 1. Let's test it with 0.3 that I play around this value and it seems to give some good results. Let's press play. So let's jump. Nothing happens. Perfect. Let's buffer a jump in the middle of the air. So if I jump in the apex of the jump, then you will see that my unbuffer jump is actually being called. And if I jump almost near the ground, then my jump has been buffered. So it's actually working as expected. We don't have any warnings. And this should be a stronger type of setup that does not rely too much on delays. So if I press play right now in my project, I will never, or well, most of the times, I won't feel that my jump has been eaten by a misplaced input press or key press, depending if you're using a keyboard or a controller. So this is a must feature that you need to add to any type of platforming games or any type of games that deal with perfect input presses. You always want to give a little bit of room for the player to hit the key, the input key that will activate any type of functionality. And just as an end side note, it would be a good idea for this value to be a variable also. So we can call it time window to jump or something like that, whatever makes more sense to you. I'm doing this so whenever any type of game designer tries your game or maybe wants to mess around with the values, then it's easier to find the variable here than to search in all the code where is it that you're handling the window to jump. So yeah, that's how you do it. Hopefully this video was helpful. We're still looking for your questions, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.